Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm Dong Xiong. On Mother's Day in the 1950s, many Jewish women across the US looked forward to one gift above all, their very own Mahjong set. Mahjong, a game of skill and luck played by four people using domino-like engraved tiles, emerged in China in the 1800s, and in the 1920s it briefly sparked a global fad. By the mid-20th century, it had become a hallmark of Jewish American culture. Today, another Mahjong resurgence is attracting new players, many of whom are learning a distinctive variation known as American Mahjong. The game history offers an unusual lens through which to see the intersection of ethnicity and belonging in the US. In the traditional Chinese version, Mahjong tiles come in set of 144 and are divided into three suits known as circle, bamboo, and a character, as well as a variety of non-suited tiles. The original game is fairly similar to Gin Rummy. The players draw and discard tiles to assemble a winning hand of 14, usually consisting of 4 sets of 3 and a pair. It can be played in highly competitive, fast-paced games or at a more leisurely, social rhythm. Learning the basics of traditional Mahjong doesn't take long, but mastering the scoring and the strategy can take a lifetime. In the early 1920s, American marketers, at first mostly white, then also Chinese, imported thousands of Mahjong sets from Shanghai. They advertised it as an exotic, sophisticated game that could compete with card games like bridge. Mahjong was soon being played everywhere from Hollywood sets to New York galas and White House functions. In 1924, Congress passed a law imposing a tax on Mahjong sets. The game's popularity in the American market sparked a fad across Asia and Europe. Chinese manufacturers of the game's bone and bamboo tiles imported so much cow bone from US stockyard that the global price skyrocketed. In China, booming exports shone a spotlight on Mahjong, helping it become known as the country's national game. Ironically, Mahjong exploded into American consciousness at a time of rising nativism, as the US was imposing new restrictions on immigration. Immigration laws already treated Asians as perpetual foreigners, making them ineligible for naturalized citizenship. For many Americans, China evoked negative stereotype of unsophisticated manual laborers and cheap chop suey. But ancient China was held in high esteem as a paragon of civilization, the home of Confucius. Marketers skillfully draw on these associations, promoting Mahjong as the great, exciting, hundreds of years old national Chinese game, though it was in fact a modern creation, less than a century old. The emphasis on ancient mandarins allowed white Americans to embrace a Chinese game while often rejecting contemporary Chinese people. Meanwhile, Mahjong appealed strongly to young Chinese Americans as a symbol of both chic American fashion and Chinese culture, allowing them to embrace both parts of their identity instead of having to choose between them. In an era of generational change and conflict, the game also brought young and old together. The rumble of shuffling tiles could be heard in apartments, family association halls, and the back rooms of general stores as the game became a fixture in Chinese American communities. The Mahjong craze died down by the mid-1920s, but pockets of players remained. From those seeds emerged new and uniquely American variations of the game. The most influential adaptation by far was driven by the National Mahjong League, established in the late 1930s by a group of Jewish women in New York who wanted to revitalize the game. After World War II, Mahjong became embedded in middle-class Jewish neighborhoods across the country. Women played it in summer vacation communities like the Catskills. now featured in color-saturated scenes in the TV series The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and taught it to their friends at home. Eventually, hundreds of thousands of players, mostly but not exclusively Jewish American women, played the league's version of the game, now popularly known as American Mahjong, compared with the game imported from China years earlier. This version permitted a smaller number of acceptable winning hands, with more variations in the combinations. By the 1960s, the league's changes had transformed the game enough that it required additional tiles and different rules. Young mothers, in particular, forged American Mahjong culture during the 1950s and the 1960s, at a time of suburbanization and newfound upward mobility for many Jewish families. Regular weekly Mahjong games helped women to build female-focused networks. Unusually, these groups weren't focused on volunteerism or children's education, but offered a chance for women simply to have fun together. Mahjong became a cultural touchstone for many who grew up in post-war Jewish American homes, along with the tile racks, coin purses, and the plates of maraschino-studded pineapple slices that often accompanied the game. In fact, Mahjong served as a way for Jewish Americans to distinguish their evolving ethnic identity. In the midst of new but still tenuous promise of integration, they confronted the risk of cultural loss that could come with assimilation into suburbia. As Mahjong ceased to be widely popular and became particularly associated with Jewish women, it subtly marked a space apart from mainstream Christian society. The game's adaptability created barriers as well as bridges, as players pushed the evolution of distinctive Mahjong variants. Today, more than 40 variations of Mahjong exist around the world, each shaping a specific culture of interaction and play, from Japan's competitive tournament to graveside games in the Philippines played to honor the dead on All Souls Day. A pivotal Mahjong scene in the blockbuster 2018 film Crazy Rich Asians highlighted the importance and meaning of the game across the international Chinese diaspora. In the US, a thriving range of new Mahjong styles reflect the diversification of Asian American communities since immigration reform in the 1960s, as groups form around their regional and national versions of Mahjong. For a new generation of players, Mahjong is once again connected to the deeply American experience of simultaneously belonging and standing apart. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly.